you planning on riding the festive 500 challenge over this Christmas? And you want one of those roundels, the ones that Rafa used to give away but don't anymore? No worries, Harrison Fund are doing them if you raise £100 towards research into Duchenne disease. Here we see Nick Pelsig with 2 sons, both suffering from it, who won't reach adulthood. Just ride 500 kilometres, raise £100 and get the badge. Why not sign up now?
Good evening, RGT racers, and welcome to another wonderful Monday night in the Nopinz Super League. This is round 3. Tonight we are racing from, now I never know how to pronounce this, is it Bideford to or Bideford to Croyd? Someone please correct me on Facebook. And this race today is 29.9 kilometers. It's a point-to-point race, so this will be interesting. And this is both for the sprinters and the climbers. So tonight, will we see another winner tonight? So far we've had 2 different races, 2 different winners. Are we going to see a new winner tonight? So we can see there from the league standings presently, in the individual gold, we've got Fellbeller, who's one of the most attacking riders that we've seen so far. Blodgett and Clays have also put in a lot of work, and then Beams, we've seen him be really attacking. In the Super League standings, silver, bronze, we've got Klaus Behring, who's again done a lot of work. Mike Swart, who we saw last week, Mike working really hard to pull onto the back and then pulling up some gap, and eventually all those chases back onto the back just cost him a few places. Jan Vanner from R3R and Bill Bonner and Neil Turner, so we're going to trio from 3R in the silver bronze category in the top 5. And the league standings for the team, Restart Racing still ahead on points of ECKD. Restart Racing had a much more aggressive ride last week. ECKD have been aggressive in both rides and they're both challenging for the top. Whereas last week with Gringo showing a very impressive performance around the Bude Loop, winning last week, bringing the Nopinz R3R up into 3rd place. In the silver bronze, we've got 2 teams who are competing. ECKD with a huge amount of numbers of races in the team, showing their dominance with a comfortable 61-point lead from OTR Blue in 2nd place. But the racing has been very competitive, and every single race has seen a little bit different every time. Jan Mazik wasn't there last week after his very impressive win in week 1, with Wheel Sucker in 2nd place, not there either. So GTR Gringo and Oliver Dowd worked very hard to bring them back. So this week we have this point-to-point race. So it starts just outside the north end of Bideford or Bideford. You can route tracks along the banks of the River Torridge, passes through the town of Instow with a little kicker as you pass through the town at about 4 kilometres in. It heads into Barnstaple, following the River Tor where we started round 1 in the series, and then crosses to the other side and the little small up and over. It progresses along the coastal path into Chivener, where the terrain starts to change and the gradual climb begins into Broughton. The first 20 kilometres is fairly flat, so expect the big lads to put the hurt on the lightweights early doors, as they know that with the longer that the race goes on, the tide will swing to the climbers. As we take a left at 21.5 kilometres, a couple of starter inclines will no doubt see some attacks. The sprinters will want to tire out the lighter climbers ready for the final climb. And here we go. We're off. We've got some racing. I will fill you in on the rest of the course later on. I'm pretty sure that this will see red numbers from the gun, because these heavier lads will want to drop these light riders as soon as they possibly can. These big lads really want to put the hurt on these climbers to really wear them out, because the end of the race is a long, hard drag before a little downhill recovery and then another uphill finish. So we are going to see a lot of fireworks towards the end of this race. So Once we get settled in this first bit, we can see a big pack gathering together. We've got all the big names in there. Beams is there, Blodgett's in there, Lambert from Pedlar's in there as well. So we've certainly got Highballs in there as well. I can just see these names popping up every now and then. You can see the names above the avatars. We've even got Tom Gakes in there putting a break in to begin with Liam Bard from R3R. Liam is a classical TT rider, very strong, can apply power for a long period of time, so he will be probably wanting to keep this steady, put the herd on and keep a nice steady pace going to really make these races work. And again, we can see some of the riders. John Beams there, not looking as painful as he was last week. Matt Looker there with a beautifully symmetrical camera point and his throat Nopinz towel, and as you can see, Matt's wearing his Sub-Zero Nopinz, true to form, very corporate. Liam Bard in there, we've got some very mood lighting going on in there. Liam looking to impress the ladies with his mood lighting and working hard up the front with Tom Gakes. Tom, last week we saw Tom really suffering last week, and then looks comfortable there at the moment. Will he stay this comfortable for the rest of the race? Zach Carner, Nopinz R3R, looking great with his cap on there, keeping the light out of his eyes. And Chris Gringo Smart, who had a superb win last week, absolutely took it to the whole of the pack last week and put some fantastic attacks in, never really looked in trouble and romped away to a comfortable win. So this first bit of the course, as you can see from the bottom graph there, is just as flat as a fart. There's a tiny little kicker as we get through the middle of this flat section, but at the moment what we'll be seeing is people just trying to just get themselves into the pack, get themselves comfortable. Riders will want to sit in the draft, but I'm fairly sure that we will see little attacks like we did in week 1, where the bigger boys will just try taking it off the front and just try and splitting this pack up before we head to the hills later on in the course. So this flat section goes on for a full 21 kilometers. So as we can see there, Terry Wilkinson from Nopinz R3R taking it to the front with another R3R rider as well. So there's a little bit of teamwork, and I think what we'll see today is teams working together to try and break this pack up. We can see East EKD yet again going off the front, John Beams again coming off, Lambert, Pedersen. These attacks are starting already. People want to break this pack up early doors. They want to get these climbers into that herd zone, so when it comes to the end of the race, they just cannot respond and win the race. So currently what have we got? We've got some red numbers already in the front. So the red numbers tells us this is just pain. The red numbers mean that that rider is putting in a huge amount of effort. They can't sustain it for long. This is why we're seeing this turnover of riders at the front. Wheel Sucker there, back for week 3 after his very impressive second place in week 1. He tried to chase down Jamazik in week 1 but just couldn't make it. Jamazik just managed to get over the top of the hill and take the downhill finish. Wheel Sucker did close him down, so good to see Wheel Sucker back in again. Obviously had a week off last week for his Christmas party before the restrictions hit. Nice to see him back. Will he do the same this week? Will he get those high 90s points, or will he take the win? Just settling in there. So we can see this pack, nobody really wants to make a break yet. There's still a few attacks off the front, and I think what we'll see is these little attacks off the front, but I think nobody really put in a serious attack on their own, because the draft is so strong with so many riders. Anybody who goes away in 1s and 2s will just get hoovered back into the pack without any worries whatsoever. John Beams, one of our most attacking riders, same again, hitting the front from pedalers. John did a superb amount of work last time and currently hitting 380 watts, so you're certainly not taking it easy on the front. They're certainly putting some effort in. Orange bars, red bars, orange into matches, beautiful orange day glow top, almost matches his helmet. We can see the dual camera there, so we can see this in RGT. One of the beautiful things about RGT is something called the Magic Roads facility, and what they can do is they can take a GPX file that's as clean as a whistle and turn that into a virtual course. So what we're seeing on this course isn't actual footage of the actual terrain itself, but is an RGT simulation of the course. The hills are real, the kickers are real, the pain is real, but just the environment is auto generated by the RGT. John Beams now being supported by a few riders, so we've got a little group of 4 off the front. We've got Bonner, Beams, Highball, I think, and can't quite tell who the back, I think, is the fourth rider. And we're just being joined again. Look at this pack responding, trying to close that group down. So I think this is what we'll see all the way through this flat section, is these tiny little attacks. The only way we'll get a split is if we see a significant amount of numbers breaking off at once. Oh, we can see a big attack going off the front there by Murdoch Zakana, just setting it up. And who have we got? We've got Tim Cook from R3R. Tim, who captains the Race 3R team, who are currently doing quite well. Putting in a big attack. That's a really big attack by Tim. And Tim, we're in the red zone. He will not be able to sustain that for very long. Blodgett trying to hoover him down. And I'm fairly sure, as we can see, that pack starts to form an echelon shape, starts to form that arrowhead, actually targeting their target, which is Tim Cook, who's off the front. Back there, one of the ECKD riders. It hasn't really shown an awful lot so far in the racing, but Fleming is looking like he's going to be doing some more of the work there today for ECKD after his teammates Fellballer, Highball and Gottlieb over the last 2 weeks have done an enormous amount of work. So the pack are kind of not chasing them down too eagerly. They know that if they just can manage to sustain a little bit of power, they are going to chase Tim down. He's not going to be able to stay away long, and we will see some team tactics coming in here. We will see riders, teams sending riders off the front just to see whether we can get some response from the other riders, see whether we can put their other riders into a bit of discomfort and see whether they can close the gap down. So the live leaderboard at the moment, as you can see on the right hand side there, are the actual positions on the road, and to the right of that we can actually see what power output they're putting on the moment. This is all relative to their weight and height, as well as their power that they're putting out. And from the, you can see on the screen there, those little coloured lines under the rider, that gives us an idea of how much effort they're putting in. Liam Bard there putting in a 6.3, 7.2 watts per kilogram. So Liam, who's approximately 70 kilograms, that's a reasonable amount of effort. That's almost 500 watts that Liam is putting in there to try and make a break or try and create a little bit of a gap on the front. And we can see Pedersen and Labard just opening a bit of a gap there. Again, will we see this be sustained, or will we see the pack start to close it down as a unit? I'm fairly sure we'll start to see the pack closing them down again, and it looks like this pack will stay together for a little while at the moment. So as I was saying, we've got a really long straight here. The straight itself is 21 kilometers long. Till we actually hit the inclines of any means at all. Because of that, we know that the pack will stay together for the majority of that, I would have thought, as the draft pulls you along. So just very similar to real life, the more riders you have in that pack, the bigger the draft, the faster you will travel together. So you will travel faster as a unit with a number of riders, and much slower as a unit. I have to work harder to maintain that speed as a smaller unit of riders. And yet again, we saw that little pack breaking off the front, and now the whole of the pack has responded and has swamped them round, and we can see them coming over the top. That's always one of the risks of of taking an attack on. You take an attack on, you break clear of the pack, and then what happens is the pack swallows you up and then takes you over. Coming down into 13th place there, we can see that pack's just weaving across the road a little bit, using the whole of the road as we'd see in real life. All of the riders holding the whole of the road there, breaking across, trying to create space for themselves, trying to find a bit draft, trying to move up to the pack to get into a position where they're just ready if they need to actually respond to an attack. Bill Bonner there, a Nopinz guy again going up the front. So Nopinz are doing a fair bit of work. Maybe this is their tactic today, just start putting in some small attacks, and we've seen all of the Nopinz guys now, as well as the R3R guys, putting in attacks off the front, just trying to break this pack up a little bit, but it's holding steady, it's holding fast. Terry Wilkinson now from Nopinz again. Terry's second attack in the first 7 kilometers of the ride. Nopinz are putting a lot of work here, but it just does not seem to be breaking the pack. So will these guys pay for these efforts later on in the ride if this pack doesn't break up? There we can see the pain cams. Liam Bard there starting to breathe a bit heavier. Matt Lucker, look at his cadence there in comparison to Liam. Matt Lucker's really spinning along there. Zach spinning along. Gringo up on his pedals, just grinding away there. Tom Gates looking much more comfortable. John looking comfortable today. John's obviously just sitting in there. I'm fairly sure that we will not see John sitting that comfortably for this long as we saw last week. Put in a huge amount of effort again off the front. Made some great breaks. A very attacking rider. And yet again, that attack is snuffed out by the chasing pack. So 8.42 kilometers in, just as we expected, we're seeing little attacks coming up here and there and everywhere, but this pack just fails to break up. So the longer that this race goes on, the more this will favour the lighter riders who can put out a tremendous amount of power and increase their watts per kilogram up those last couple of hills that will really see who has made the grade. Ostergaard there, another one of the CKD riders. There has been a very, very strong attacking team in this series so far. It's been good to see. And again, we can just see yet another small little group heading up the front. We're getting these little 3 and 4 groups. These 3 and 4 groups won't be enough to actually make any real indent into the pace of the pack, and they're being able to chase them down. But eventually, what will happen, eventually we will start to see some of the weaker riders just not being able to respond to these little surges. So as we can see, if we manage to see anybody's power curve, which we can see there, we'll see these little spikes in the power and then easing off, a few spikes in the power and then easing off again. And this is just that responding to these attacks. Fleming back from ECKD again. He must be one of the riders that ECKD have targeted to make their attacks today. Nopinz R3R, and the R3R guys seem to be sending anybody up the road they can. John Beams finally starting to show some attacking spirit, putting an attack with Bard and Beams again and back. Another threesome at the front. Will they be able to hold any space? Oh, they've got a bit of a gap there. Not massive, but enough to certainly make the pack think about what they're going to do about this. So Nopinz, Pedalers and ECAKD won't be in any massive hurry to chase this pack down. They'll try and get the likes of Dirty Dan's with Gav Ash, who's their strongest rider in there, to try and chase things down. Some of the other riders as well. Restart, well, Mike Swart. Is Mike Swart in there today? I haven't seen Mike on the starting line yet, which is a shame because Mike did an awful lot of work last week. But we've got Blodgett in there from Restart as well, who will no doubt be put. Oh, there's Mike there. Mike is in there. Mike was superb last week. Mike had to work really hard in the latter half of the race to keep chasing the front pack down. Eventually that got to him, the attrition got to him, and he just dropped off the back. But Mike's putting that work in now, closing down these 3 riders from Restart, and I think he with Blodgett will probably, hopefully, put in a little bit more attacking opportunities this week to see how they go. Wheelsucker coming off the front, and again we can just see that starting to close up again. But will we start to see riders just dropping off the back in 1s and 2s? That's how we're going to see this pack start to whittle down in this first 20 kilometers. We're going to see that pack just gradually whittling down, maybe 1 rider at a time, as they are unable to respond to some of these attacks that are happening right now. Beams Blodgett up into the red zone, putting some effort in there, trying to just break up this pack, but nobody's been successful so far. We've still got a huge number of riders trundling along the Cornwall roads as they head to the coast and head to Croyd. Neil Turner, one of that trio of riders who are currently in 3rd, 4th and 5th in the silver bronze, and Neil putting an attack in. So there's a very, very definite plan from Nopinz and R3R working together here. Even though they're in separate leagues, they are very definitely working together to try to break this pack up. Neil Turner is a strong B rider, if not an A rider. He's kind of almost on the cusp of the Nopinz team. Works very hard, and there we can see all 3 camera angles. So we've got from the front there, we've got from the rear, and we've also got the aerial view. This is one of the things that RGT can give to us, is multiple camera angles of the same race, just like on real TV, and you get the opportunity to see the race evolving from all different positions. Fellballer there in first position, kind of cranking out a bit of a gap, but not really supported by anybody with them. So will he be able to hold that for long? In the very first race, we saw Felbella put in a huge amount of work. So Rasmus put in an enormous amount of effort in that first race. Really worked hard. He was super attacking in that first half of the race and just died a little bit towards the end and wasn't able to hang on. But certainly one of the more aggressive riders that we've seen in the pack so far. Zach Karner, first time that we've seen Zach today, really putting himself to the front. Nopinz and R3 are taking that turn, not wanting to tire out all of the riders, and we've seen that with the other teams as well. Nobody seems to be attacking again and again and again and again to try and attack and recover, attack and recover, attack and recover. And we're seeing the bigger teams putting these attacks in because they've got numbers to be able to do that. The smaller teams, we're not quite seeing so much like Draft with Tom Gakes. He will sit in because he doesn't really have any teammates to support him. So he will sit in the draft, let these bigger teams do the work, and just hope that he can hang on in there. We can see the power graph there. Look at Zach's power graph there on the left-hand side top. Just look how spiky it looks. These are those little surges. Every little pike is a little power surge where the pack's trying to chase down the front riders. And these little rests and recoveries. Now that is absolutely energy sapping. It's much easier to hold a consistent power for a length of time than it is to peak and relax and peak and relax and peak and relax. It just absolutely saps the legs, and when it kind of comes to the little bit of inclines that we're going to see, we will almost certainly see riders start to drop off the back. But that's a little way away from us yet. So we've still got another 8 kilometers of riding before we actually see this road really take a turn for the up, when we get a couple of little warm-up inclines, and I'm fairly sure that we'll see some attacks there. So after that 21.5 kilometers, the main start climbs just after we leave Braunton, and bizarrely we climb up to the coast, which is something that you wouldn't normally expect to see. At 25 kilometers though, the gradient really picks up, and that's when I'm expecting the serious attacks to happen before it flattens out to 25.7 kilometers. After that little bit of flattening out, as the pack gathers itself together, we've got a little really sharp and brutal incline to 26.5 kilometers, which I'm fairly sure we'll see some of these riders really try and put the power down, really try and put the effort in. And we can see this little mid-flat section now. We look on the bottom there, we can just see this tiny little blip in this flat section, where we can just see some of these attacks. Now, if anything is going to split the pack up, this little interval will. This little incline will just maybe split this pack in half. We might see some of the riders dropping off the back before they head back down the hill again, back onto the flat section. Will we actually see a bit of fresh air between the groups of riders, or will everybody come back together, which looks like it might be happening? So back to what I was saying, after this sharp and brutal incline to 26.5 kilometers, we're bound to see the pack split up, this undoubtedly, but that little incline is not it. We can now start to see a bit fresh air, that little bit of fresh air there between these groups. That little group behind there, behind Looker and the front group there, are really going to have to work hard to come back on again. We've got 2 riders dropping off the back there, fairly sure that that's their race over. They will not make it back to the front pack. And we can see that little smaller group starting to splinter as all of them are working individually to try and chase back onto this front pack. That little gap is actually really hard to close down. You push, you push, you push, you think you're almost there, and then suddenly, boom, game over, it's gone. Liam Bard, his work's done for tonight. Liam put in a big amount of effort at the start, which we knew he would. Liam will now just tap it home, try and have his one-on-one race with Edadam from ECKD. Kevin Barkley, one of the OTI riders, and Terry Wilkinson, again, who was certainly put out at the front at the start of the ride there to try and break things down. Terry's job's done tonight. He obviously had a very clear job to do, and that was to try and tire these guys out. And we can see we've got 3 OTR riders dropping off the back there. We've got Kevin Barkley, Richard Hughes, all dropping off the back. And there's Murdoch from Team 3R just dropping off the back as well. So we can see that tiny little incline made a difference. There goes Gringo. Gringo has decided that he's had enough of the sitting in the pack. He's decided to take a little stab at it. not massively working hard. 424 watts. He says 424 watts. I'd be quite proud to be holding 424 watts for a few minutes. But for Gringo, the walk in the park, back into the yellow zone, orange zone. We saw last week how Gringo had the capacity to be able to hold in the red zone for a significant amount of time, just grinding the opposition down. And we can see Klaus Behring trying to close that gap, trying to cover up. Klaus knows that this is a serious attack. He knows from last week how Gringo took it to the whole of the pack. Behring from ECKD cannot afford to let him go. He's working really hard. Gringo is not making it easy for him at all, is he? Making him really work hard back onto this pack. And who's joining there? Who's joining them there in third place? That does like it's another race 3R rider by the looks of it. I think it's Zach Harner. So Zach's up with Gringo. So we've got two Nopinz guys in the front row. And Feldballer's there as well. So again, we've got Gringo, Feldballer, Harner in that front pack. I thought it was Behring. I do apologise. It was Feldballer. His name was hidden by Klaus. Klaus, sorry, I've given you credit. Sorry, Rasmus, I've robbed you of that attack there. But as we can see, that pack's starting to come back. Bill Bonner closing down his teammates. I'm fairly sure there'll be some words to be had about that in the dressing room later on. Mike Swart working hard there in the front, and we can now start to see things just thinning out rather than a big blob of riders. We're starting to see it thinning out a little bit. There's more of a pace line going on. His riders at the back are having to work really hard to hold on, and what we'll see, any little surges in pace, which we're going to see, I'm fairly sure we will start to see these back riders coming off. So in the front group, we've got Wheelsucker, Pedersen, Beams is still there, Wheelsucker's in there, Jan Vanner's still there, Gringo obviously, Feldballer, Chris Jones. And we've still got Tim Cook in there as well, who put in a really good attack. So it's Tim showing his strength, as well as all the front runners that we'd expect to see. Ryan Miller, one of the American Nopinz guys, has been quiet so far. Maybe Nopinz are just holding him in their back pocket, just waiting to attack later on. But there goes the Nopinz guys again. Breaking free. Zach Harner this time. Is he going to be joined by two of his colleagues? Or not. Liam Bard. Where did Liam Bard come from? Is he Liam Bard's managed to make it back in, or is that, or my eyes deceiving me? No, Liam Bard is back in. I was fairly sure he was off the back. Maybe I was looking at the wrong camera angle, but Liam Bard, he's back in. How on earth did Liam get there? Well done, Liam. Good effort, lad. But Liam managed to get back in there. R3R, Nopinz, still continuing to work hard. Zach Harner this time pushing up. Zach's probably one of the contenders for the win. Highball from ECKD, again a very attacking rider. And we're just seeing some little breaks, but it's coming back together again. So 17.82 kilometers. We've probably got another 3 kilometers of this toing and froing on these flat sections. Nobody seems to be taking it completely on. Nobody's broken this pack yet, but these little attacks, these little spikes, look, just look at Pedersen's power profile on the top left hand side there. Just look, this is a flat section of the course. You would expect in a flat section of the course to be doing any TT, that should be as flat as anything, but we can see, look how spiky it is. That just tells us how these guys have been riding along this section. It's been attack after attack after attack after attack. Little surges. Bard again putting those surges, getting those red numbers in, going into that pain. Bit of a shorter one this time, with just a little dig again, just to try and introduce a little bit of fatigue into these muscles, so when it comes to the climb, whoever's still got any reserve left in the legs, that's who we will see taking it to the front of the course. So Bard now got a bit of a gap, but we've seen this, haven't we? We've seen these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 metre gaps or so open up, but as a solo rider it doesn't really have an impact. But as you can see there, Simon's on the back. He's obviously starting to struggle with these attacks. He's having a bit of a breather, but he's managed to just dig in, have a word with himself, get himself into the pack. What he'll try and do now is he'll try and recover. So if this pack surges again, it'll make it a lot harder for him to get back in, and that's what you want to do. So somebody surges, just relaxes off. Somebody else surges, just relaxes off. And if you're caught off the back, it means you have to work doubly hard to chase back on again, as we saw happen with Mike Swart last week. So Holtz now from ECAKD, a new rider on the front. New names coming to the front this week, so certainly far more team tactics being played this week than we've seen in the other 2 weeks, and that's because we have an extremely flat course. 19.28 kilometers, so 2 more kilometers to go. So we're going to start to see things hotting up in about the next couple of kilometers, but at the moment front pack still staying together, but it'd be interesting to see how this lactics kick in. Now look at Liam Bard's graph in comparison. Big spikes to begin with, dipped off, and then has managed to maintain that long sustained power, which is Liam's specialty. Liam loves a bit of TTing, can hold that power for a long period of time. Not really a sprinter. Liam will not be in there for the sprint. We know that he sprints as good as a juggernaut truck. Unlike Looker, who does have a bit of a sprint. Matt hasn't managed to hold onto the front group over the last couple of races, but Matt's looking strong there today. Now again, Nopinz R3 are pushing that pace up the front. 5.6, 5.4 watts per kilogram into the red zone, into the orange zone, sustaining that effort back into the red again. So this is a bit of a sustained effort from Matt. He's definitely trying to break this pack up. Back into the pack view. Still staying together. Riders that are hitting the front, just having a bit of a breather at the back. We've got probably most of the teams represented, but as we've seen so far, we've seen each of the teams sending riders up the road. John Beams has been a bit quiet, he's done a bit of work. Lambert hasn't really done a huge amount of work for pedalers today, but I think he left a lot of work to John last week. Is Lambert actually going to do a little bit of work there today? No Hendrik Bob this week, so I've seen. I don't think I've seen Hendrik this week. Hendrik had a great race last week, partnering Gringo for the win. They were really working together very, very well, and then Gringo managed to pull away, but I can't see Hendrik in the pack this week, so maybe he's having a week off. Lambert taking his place. Looker still holding a bit of a gap off the front, working hard. Oh, he's got a bit of a sweat on. Oh, that's nice to see. Matt's actually doing a bit graft there today, a bit of a sweat on. Liam Bard starting to lose some of that nice form now, with the fatigue starting to kick in. Zakana spinning away like a hamster in a wheel. And Tom Gates looking comfortable. Tom's just been sitting in that draft there. Tom hasn't had to work very hard so far, so maybe he's that dark horse, and maybe he's going to do a little bit more towards the end. Gringo zooming his camera in on his toned triceps this week. We had a bit of a wider view of Gringo last week. He's decided to show us his guns this week, and there we go. Gringo off the seat, Matt Looker off the seat, both of them working hard. It's really good when you see these riders putting in these simultaneous attacks, putting in this synchronous up on their feet and trying to squeeze a little bit more power out their legs to really put some hurt onto this pack. Casper Hederdam from ECKD now being joined by his teammate. There now, Klaus Behring it is this time. Klaus, I'll give you the credit this time. I might give it to Fellballer last time, but Klaus putting some effort off the front. And this looks like maybe Blodgett from Restart coming through with another couple of Nopinz riders. Bill Bonner and Zach Horner again putting it off the front. But yet again, that pack is continuing to close them down. Right, this is where it begins, everyone. So we're now at 21.83 kilometers. This is where we are going to start to see the race completely change. So we've got these nice little couple of starter inclines there. We go 2.8%, 3%, just enough to make those legs burn a little bit, just enough to make the riders think about, oof, you bugger, this is starting to smart a bit. And let's see who can manage to hold that power through. Gringo, unsurprisingly, on the front, continuing to put the pressure on the pack behind him. We can see some riders just starting to drop off the back there. Will they be able to hang on? These a couple of little tester kickers. If they're not going to be able to hang on here, they've got absolutely no chance when we hit the main climb in about 4 kilometers time. Gringo undoubtedly would like to get back-to-back wins. Wheelsucker probably fancies his chances as well. Gavash sitting quietly. Gavash from Dirty Dan's hasn't really got any team support, so Gavash will be relying on all of the other teams to do the work for him, so he can hopefully be able to sit in the wheel, come over the top and take the win with a beautiful glory pose. I'd like to see what Gav's glory pose actually is. That would be great to see in these virtual racing platforms, is finishing poses, a bit like Street Fighter, you know, left, downshift, right, foot sweep to kind of get your finishing pose. That would be great if you could choose how you want to finish your ride. I'm sure there'd be plenty. What I would love to see is somebody pulling a wheelie at 10.2 watts per kilogram. That would be great to see. So packs all back together again, but that's that little first incline, that little starter incline just out of the way. We're going to see things starting to pick up again. We can just see on that bottom graph, we're still in the green. Look at all those white dots though along that bottom graph, though. We can just see how this field is really broken up. So what we're looking at is that big white dot. That's where the front pack is. The rest of the white dots along the road are the rest of the riders, and we can just see how it's broken up. Last week what we saw is riders dropping off and forming small groups and forming their own little race. We can see now that these are probably individual riders, maybe ones and twos now as they've dropped off individually. We probably won't see big groups dropping off at the same time until we start to see things starting to pick up. So we are probably just in Braunton now, just passing the coffee shop, kind of heading up towards where the climb really starts. So when we hit this 25-kilometer mark, we will really see this incline start to ramp up. So in about 2 kilometers time, it's currently quite comfortable, 1% comfortable for these guys. Headed out, I'm not prepared to wait. Heading off the front again for the ECKD guys, wanting to put some attacks in. Gavash there. Liam Bard's still there. Liam's still working really hard. Wheelsucker probably fancies his chances. Wheelsucker will rely on the other teams to pull him along. And we're seeing those comfortable riders, those comfortable leaders there. So you've got Wheelsucker, who's certainly going to be in there. Gringo, who's going to be in there. Zach Harner's probably going to be in there. Gavash hasn't really impressed us yet, but he's got some chances there. We've got some new names in there as well, such as Lennox hasn't really shown. Hart did a reasonable amount of work last time, and Bach hasn't really done anything so far. John Beams, second half of the race, is he going to start putting in his second half of the race attack? But he's left it to the hillier sections of the ride, which is always a little bit more challenging. And now we can just see these riders, look at them in the blue zone, in the green zone, and they're starting to get a little bit of recovery as this just flattens out a little bit. All the riders there getting the cadence in a comfortable. Matlock has managed to maintain a relatively consistent high cadence. He's certainly ticking over at about 100 revs a minute there. Liam Bard starting to rocking and rolling like an Elvis tribute on his bike there, starting to feel it. Zach Connor looking strong. Gringo flexing his triceps. Tom Gake's looking good, and John still looking comfortable actually for John. So John, I think there's something in the tank there for John. I think he's just holding back for the minute, but I don't think it'll be like that for long. Right, here we go. This is where it starts to pick up. 25 kilometers. This is where it really starts to pick up. Look at that slope increasing. So 5.8% there now. This is where we'll see these boys really start to test the rest of the pack, as we start to see these front riders starting to put some work in. That pack's going to find it harder to close down. So these heavier riders that were front at the start of the race will now really be starting to feel this. So as in real life, your weight on these platforms has an impact of how you will perform on these inclines. The heavier you are, the harder you have to push to provide the same watts per kilogram, which allows you to climb strongly. This now favours the lighter riders, the ones who are a bit lighter but have still got a bit of a punch behind them. Unfortunately, I don't know the weights of some of these riders. It's very closely kept secret, but they all have to submit their weight to make sure that they're legit, to make sure that this is very, very fair racing, and RGT do a very good job of that. We have the RGT DB site, which is actually run by Mike Swart, one of the Restart riders. There's one of his teammates, Wheeler, and he runs the site, and that records all of the RGT results. Now we can start to see things starting to break up. John Beams, surprisingly, he's kind of not holding that front group. I'm surprised that John looked quite comfortable, and maybe he's just having one of those days. Gavash from Dirty Dan's breaking off. Restart there breaking off. But will the guys close this down? They're trying hard. They know that this incline is going to pick up. This is the flat section. If they're going to close it up, This is where they have to do it. We've got the second bit of the climb coming up any second. When we get to that 26.5 kilometers, that's the number to look out for, guys. Once we get to 26.5, we'll start to see that slope massively increase, and then we'll really see these gaps starting to form. So these riders, John needs to work hard to get back in there. Yep, you can see John starting to feel it a bit there now. Gringo working hard up on the pedals, kind of low cadence, grinding along. Luca still spinning along there at 100 or so revs a minute. Zakana similarly. Matt Luca now starting to put a work in. He can start to see that percentage increasing. Look on that top right hand of that corner of that box. We can see that inclines up into the 7s, 8% again. Little kicker, flattens off again there. So we're starting to see things really breaking up now. Gringo off the front with wheel sucker. Yeah, Christoph, John's still there. He's just about hanging in there, but I think he's having to work really hard, John, to actually hold in. He nearly dropped off for a moment, but he managed to pull himself back in on the flat. John's been very attacking, but he's had to be relatively defensive this week, as Nopinz have really been putting in most of the attacks. So we've got a little group off the front now, so we can see that very clearly this group has broken clear of the rest of the pack. We can see that gap now, 130 metres. We've got 10 riders in this front group. We've got Tom Giggs there, as we expected. Tom is kind of taking it easy. Tom is about the same weight as a wet flannel, so Tom will be relying on his lightweight build to be able to put on the power in these uphill bits. A little bit of a flat section now, there's 27 kilometers, so things are probably fairly easy. They can recover a little bit now. Whether they'll start to put any attacks in, we just don't know. There's the second group on the road. John Beams in the second group. Matt Lucker working hard. Neil Turner in there. Gav Ash kind of just dropped off there. So Gav from Dirty Dan's, he was probably their chance of getting some high points there. Just breaking off the front. Liam Bard finally dropping off. Matt Lucker, as we could see, he was spinning along and up on the wheels, pushing along. Bill Bonner, he put in a good few attacks. So these guys that put in attacks have started to pay for it now. There goes Rasmus. One of his customary attacks. Is anybody going to respond, or they're just going to wait? So he's attacked on this downhill section, so this is the only real recovery that these guys get. Once we start to get into the center, we've got this tiny little incline coming up now, that little hill, nothing too testing, but enough to see whether we can close them down. Look at those red numbers there. So all of the riders are kind of pushing red numbers. These guys want to be in this front group. They want to be in this section to be able to take the downhill and be able to catapult, slingshot up the last little bit of the climb, which is Hobbs Hill. So that last little bit of the race is Hobbs Hill. There's the 1 kilometer Flamme Rouge. 1 kilometer to go. It's going to be 1 kilometer of a little bit of downhill, and then we've got this really little sharp, steep little stinger to end as we go up Hobbs Hill, and then we turn left onto Jones's Hill. So a great uphill finish, and I'm fairly sure that we will see these riders working really hard to get those points. Gringo with Felbala, both superb at attacking riders, now taking it to the rest of the pack, and they've got a 74 meter advantage at this level in the race. At this point in the race, that's a canny advantage they've got there. So will the pack be able to close these guys down, or will these two be chasing it down between the two of them? Really fancy. Who's your money on, guys? Who's your money on? Come on, get your bets in. Is Rasmus going to win it this week after his attacking, or is Gringo going to sit in his wheel, as he's doing there now, and take the win again? After last week, Gringo really took the attacks out, and he's now started to go. Look at that red zone there for Gringo. Felbala just dropping into the orange for a little bit. Has he left it too late? Gringo powering away. Is he going to take it? 9.6 watts per kilogram. Gringo takes the win yet again. Felbala comfortably in second. Great break by those two. Jan Vanna from R3R in there for third place. Jan did a great race, and we could just see all of these riders starting to come in. So that race did exactly what we expected it to do. Really, really tight first 20 kilometers. Then it started to break up. We're starting to see all of these front pack riders are now starting to come in. now in little or bigger groups. And then as we drop down the field, we'll start to see some of these riders coming in drips and drabs. As we can see, all these riders, look at them putting in red numbers. They want those points, they want those positions, they want their team to be somewhere on the leaderboard. Great stuff, guys. So that was an expected race. I think that was a kind of what we had expected to see. Attacks all the way along that flat. And then we just saw those decisive attacks happening. And the decisive attack didn't really happen until the very end. I thought that decisive attack might have happened a little bit earlier. I thought Gringo might have gone that little bit sooner than he did. But obviously Felbella forced his hand on the end there. Gringo took it to him and took him on the very, very final sprint. Felbella really worked very, very hard. Tim Cook, after a superb bit of work there from Tim today, to put some in attacks. And that just is testament to the work that Race 3R and Nopinz put in. So on the right hand side, there's the final results of the top 20 riders. GTR Gringo takes his second win in a row. Next week he'll be on a hat-trick after his Christmas celebrations. Early Christmas present for Gringo. Rasmus Felbella, superb performance again today in second place, one of our more attacking riders. Jan Vanna working very hard for the race 3R team. High ball from ECKD. Tom Giggs, that's his best performance so far, up in 5th place. Tom did everything he needed to do, sat in the draft on the flat sections, used his lightweight advantage on the hills, and managed to get a great position. Zach Corner, probably who was in for a high position today, put a lot of work in attacks, and I think that's probably what cost him. John Linden, that's a new name. We haven't really seen anything of Jan Linden so far, but it's great to see a different team coming into that top 10 positions. Blodgett there, one of the restart guys, taking it just ahead of Wheelsucker, who got second place on week 1. Mike Swart, again a great performance by Mike Swart from restart, taking Gavash by a few seconds. Gavash, the highest Dirty Dan's finner. Matt Wheeler coming in 12th. John Beams. John has had a quiet race today. I think that's probably fair to say. But over the last 2 weeks, John's been putting in a huge amount of effort. So he's allowed to have a week off. You know, maybe he started his Christmas celebrations early. Maybe he's got the slow gin going. And maybe he's just testing that. Or maybe just testing his Christmas cake, which I'm sure he's doused full of whiskey, Tia Maria, and of course, a bit of... oh, what? Captain's rum, do you reckon? Do you reckon Beams is a rum guy? Possibly. Matt Lugger did really well on the front, worked hard. We can see all these riders coming in. Matt Lugger did a good amount of work there with Bill Bonner from Nopinz R3R. Klaus Behring put in a few attacks. Ostergaard, another name that we haven't seen an awful lot. And Lorenzo Simons. That's a great name. Oh, Lorenzo always just sounds sexy, doesn't it? Pedersen coming in there at 19th, and Liam Bod, who did an amazing amount of work at the beginning of the race. I thought he dropped off the front back, but he managed to tap himself back in again. And we saw Liam disco dancing on his bike towards the end there with his mood lighting, showing his moves, showing his lighting to the ladies, showing his moves. No doubt you'll be getting his fan mail through the post in the next few days. Lennox, we saw Lennox on the front a couple of times. Neil Turner, one of the R3R guys, working a bit hard. Lambert, again showing for the first time. Chris Jones in there, No Bauer, and Headerdam. Rob Miller, one of the quieter 3R riders today, but in this in the top 30. Duke Hart had a better week last week. Jacob Scheidt, new name for us, and Hendrik Holst as well. So there's the top 30. So again, we're seeing very familiar names, and this will be reflected in the only in the team results, but in the individual results. Will we see Gringo now taking the top spot? We'll see Felbella keeping up there. Will we see some new names at the top of the table? And there's the official results all the way down to P39. One of my favourite names in 35th there, Careless Vesper. I'm sure that he never wants to dance again, unlike Liam Bod, who we saw dancing away there today. Tim Cook, great work. Fleming back, another good strong ride from Fleming there today. OTR guys didn't have the best day today, as Hughes, Barkley and Pete Rossen all coming around about the same time. Terry Wilkinson from Nopinz, who put in a great amount of work to begin with, and Sean Murtoch who again showed at the front for the R3R guys. So race 3R at R3R Nopinz really took it to this pack there today, and because of that they managed to get 2 riders in the top 3 today, and I'm fairly sure we'll see this reflected in the final points before Christmas. So who is going to be top of the shop for Christmas? Who's going to be the Christmas number 1? Who's you betting on? Who's going to be the team that's going to be taking the Christmas number 1? Who's going to be the rider that is going to be taking the Christmas number 1? But more importantly, will we see Mr. Blobby releasing yet another song to snap away the Christmas number 1 from, no doubt, Mr. Sheeran and Elton John? Next week, we've got a great named stage called Stugadoo. Only works well if you say it in probably the accent of your choice. Another loop course, 602 meters of elevation this course, so this is going to be a very unpleasant ride for the guys. Only 38 kilometers though, so we can see that in that 38 kilometers we've got an awful lot of climbing. So this again we'll see plenty of attacking. Next week I'm fairly sure we'll see some action from the gun, absolutely from the gun, and we'll see that front pack breaking up probably a lot earlier than what we did there today. We'll see these little groups forming, may well see a breakaway. Did you predict the winner today? Is that what you expected to happen? Did you back anybody to be able to win? Who knows? I don't really know. There's been a bit quiet in the chat there today, so don't be afraid to get your chat in. Don't be starting your Christmas celebrations yet. Don't be getting your Christmas party in. If you do, make sure that you have one for me. Mine's a gin and tonic. There's a little bit of ice, slice of lemon or lime, not bothered, depends what they've got. I'm happy with that. So thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed the 3rd round of the Nopinz R3R series. The winner of the Nopinz voucher this week will go to one of the finishing riders in all of the categories. So this will be picked at random by our very highly sophisticated random number generator, and we will let everybody know who the winner is on the stream. As always guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure that you interact on the Facebook group. Get yourself in there, get your comments in, get your predictions in, get your jokes in, get whatever you want in. But whatever you do, enjoy your racing this week, enjoy your riding, and I hope you all have a very, very Merry Christmas. Thank you very much guys. Have a great week. I shall see you between Christmas and New Year, no doubt with a headache and a belly full of Christmas cheer. Good night.